Hello and welcome to this really quick beginner's tutorial on using watercolour paints. So this is perfect if you are a complete beginner, or maybe you've had a little break from painting and you wanted to get back into it, or you're just interested in having a little go. This is perfect for beginners. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm just loading up that paintbrush with my chosen colour. So I want to use approximately 50% water to paint, just to make sure I get the right consistency. So really loading up that paintbrush. The first thing that I'm going to do is to do a gradient. So I'm just going to paint a square, just to make sure I've got the right consistency of water to paint there. And then what I'm going to do is gradually take off the excess paint and just pull that colour in a downwards motion so that it gradually gets lighter and lighter. So for a gradient we want to be going from the darkest colour right the way down to the lightest version of that colour. So gradually taking off the paint, moving it down the page until it becomes lighter and lighter. So I do that by taking off any excess paint and just applying a bit more water, and you can see that it gradually gets lighter. So we don't really ever use much white when we're painting with watercolour. We can just do it by taking off the excess paint to get the lighter shade. So we're going to do exactly the same thing again, making sure I clean my brush thoroughly in between each colour, just to make sure that I don't get a blend in those colours that I'm not going to mix together. Exactly the same thing again, this time using a different colour. I'm going to just paint myself that square to start off, and then just pulling down that paint, gradually taking off any excess so that I get lighter and lighter. So I'm working on watercolour paper here, but if you are just starting out, any paper is fine. You might find that if you have excess water on your brush that the paper might wrinkle slightly, so just be aware of that. Watercolour paper is relatively cheap for a watercolour pad, and it's just really good making sure that you don't kind of get any wrinkles in your paper. So I'm going to do the same again, just painting that square and then taking off my excess paint so that my colour gets lighter and lighter as I go down the gradient scale. Making sure that I take off any excess water just before I apply it to the page, just because I don't want to flood the page with water. So really keeping that consistently going as I paint. So by the time I get to the bottom of that gradient, I should really just be using water and not have any paint on the brush there. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to blend two of those colours together. So I'm just going to start by again loading up my brush, making sure I've got roughly 50% water to paint. And then I'm just going to paint a box using that first colour, the square. Painting my square, taking off any excess paint, and then going in with my second colour. Making sure I've got plenty of paint on there, and again just painting another square underneath. And then I'm going to paint another square just slightly below that first square, and these are the two colours that I want to blend together, so this yellow and this orange. And I do that simply by dabbing my brush in between those two colours, and you can see that it just starts to blend into each other. So the water really does all the work. taking off the excess, and you'll see that it just sort of, I'm just guiding those two colours to blend together, adding a little bit more water just to get rid of any lines. We don't want to see the line in the join. Cleaning my brush completely again, I'm going to go in with my next colour. So this is kind of a pinky red that I'm going to blend with my yellow. Again, underneath, just painting a smaller square. And then taking off that excess paint in my water, I'm just going to again just drag those two colours to meet in the middle. And you can see it just starts to blend as I apply that water. If I need a little bit more water, I can do that. And just ease those two colours together. We get that lovely blend in the middle. And this is a really great technique to use in watercolour when you are painting. Particularly, I like to do a lot of botanical illustrations, so lots of plants and flowers, and it really just gives a lovely effect, particularly when you're painting things like leaves and you want to get variation in the greens. So another technique here, just using this brush. It's quite a large brush, not too big, but kind of large enough. It's got a nice point, so I'm just going to show you some different types of mark making that you can do with a brush like this. So again, loading up that brush and then just dragging it down the page, starting off at the point, at the bristle, and then dragging it round so that I get this nice shape, which again is really nice for when you're doing things like botanical illustrations, plants, flowers. And then doing exactly the same thing again, but this time using some blue on the top of that green to blend it together. So we get that lovely shadow on the outside. I'm going to do the same thing again, but this time with some purple, and you'll be able to see how those colours, just by dabbing that water, really helps those colours to move and merge together. We get that lovely blend. So I've got a smaller brush here, which is nice for creating some different types of mark making. So again, I need to do the same technique of making sure I've got enough water to paint on that brush. I'm just going to do a little mini plant illustration here. I'm just sort of making it up as I go along. I'm not particularly working from anything, but just to give you an idea, you can get some lovely fine lines that are perfect for botanical illustrations. So just guiding that paint around that page, controlling it with that brush. And then I can start to add some tone to that, so just on the edges, a few shadows just to make it pop. And I want to make sure that I'm cleaning that brush in between each colour, just so that the colours don't run into each other. And then I'm going in with some purple here, some small little marks on the page just to give the impression of some flowers. Again, not really thinking too much about it, it's just to show you the different mark making ideas that you can do. But again, just working into that illustration, using those tiny, tiny marks with the tip of the brush. Gives a really nice effect. So making sure I clean my brush thoroughly between each colour. And I can also use this tiny brush to make these types of marks, particularly if I wanted to do even smaller flowers. So So there you go, some ideas for beginners. If you're a beginner, some things to try. Just a really good tip, you want to make sure you keep your brushes nice and safe, and you don't want them to get damaged. So I always like to leave my brushes in the water pointing upwards, just so that the bristles don't get damaged. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon for another video.